This episode is brought to you in association with Powered 4 TV, so go and check them out for anything wrestling related, old events, new events when we come out of COVID, podcasts, you name it, it's all there at Powered 4 TV, so find them across social media.
Guys and gals, Stewie's Wrestling Podcast is the hottest thing going in 2020. It's going to be the hottest thing going in 2021, and if you miss out on riding this train, guess what? You're not a fan of pro wrestling, and you're not a fan of anything that's hot. Because this is a hot commodity. Check out Stu's Wrestling Podcast.
You're listening to Stu's Wrestling Podcast. It's time for British Wrestling's sharpshooter, your host, Stu Harmer.
It's episode 55 and my guest today is coming all the way from Tokyo, Japan. It is Rionne Fujiwara. Ryan moved out to Japan from Australia many years ago. Mr. Fujiwara has wrestled for Pro Wrestling Noah, Wrestle 1, All Japan as a freelancer, and he's took on some of the best, including Tatsumi Fujinami, Keiji Muta, as we know as the Great Muta, and many more. We talk about some of the trips he's had across Japan for the various promotions and world events that he's been to in America, Dubai, and he's even been here in the UK. So, without further ado, this is episode 55 with Rionne Fujiwara. Enjoy. My guest today, all the way from Japan, because he was born in Australia, it is Rionne Fujiwara, all the way from Japan. Whereabouts in Japan, actually? Where are you based?
I'm in Tokyo.
Oh, nice. Right in the capital.
Yeah, right in Tokyo. So,
how's it been over there with COVID and stuff of that nature? I'll ask you that first.
well, we had an emergency shutdown, they called it, but it was never a lockdown, right? So we were told basically stay home if you can. They closed down a lot of the nightlife for like a month in April. But I mean, to be honest, it's kind of just in the back of our minds right now. It's not at the forefront. You know, everyone here wears a mask already. We're generally pretty good with, Japanese are generally pretty good with hygiene as it is. The only problems that we ever used to have, like on the trains here in Tokyo, like the old salarymen would be like, coughing and spluttering and not covering their mouths. And that's all changed. So now they do too. So it's not really a whole lot of difference, to be honest.
Okay, that's cool, man. That's cool. Right, I'm going to get to you now. We're going to segue into you. When did you first begin wrestling training?
So I've been doing martial arts since I was 6 years old. Started with Taekwondo, got it up to a second degree black belt, was in like the Australian junior team. Then one day, randomly, my father said to me, you know what, you're kind of at the top of your game for Taekwondo. So this is when I was 12, going on 13. We're going to pull you out and we're going to put you in karate. And he wanted me to basically start all over again as a white belt. So I did that, and that's kind of what got me to Japan originally. I came over here when I was 19 for karate for an 8-week trip. And I kept doing all that until I was about maybe 20. So that's 20 years of kind of like martial arts. And I kind of, 20 years of martial arts. And I kind of got sick of it for a while and just, got into the, you're a young man partying here in Tokyo. And I started doing Aikido, which I still do today. And along the way, I kind of missed the kicks, because in Aikido there's no kicks. So I thought, well, I'm going to start. My friend convinced me to join his kickboxing dojo. It's probably around 2008. I was kickboxing for a whole time, and then around 2012 there was a fortune teller in the gym. We're a 55-year-old Japanese lady, just kind of doing kickboxing as a hobby. And she says to me, look, I'll read your tarot cards, and I'll read your palms, I'll do your tarot cards, and let's see. So she did it all. And she said, like, once it was all out there, like, oh, your life path is not going the way that it should be. you're not doing what you want to do. Like, what do you want to do? And I was kind of just half jokingly said, oh, I really want to be a pro wrestler. Now, this woman, unbeknownst to me, had like amazing connections in the MMA world in Japan and the pro wrestling world. And she said, well, I know this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. So how about I hook you up? And I was like, what, really? And she put me in touch with a guy called Akira Nogami, who had spent his entire career in New Japan. He was a young boy, they called him, in New Japan. And there was a company at the time called Smash. And it was run by Tajiri, Yoshihiro Tajiri, who had been in WWE. And Akira invited me down, and he said, well, I'll introduce you to Tajiri, and we'll go from there. So that was January, I lied, January 2012. This company called Smash. And they were quite an amazing company. Their top star was a girl called Kana, who is now Asuka in WWE.
Absolutely.
So I went down there, and I was like amazed by the ability of all the wrestlers. And I met Tajiri. I never forget. January 2012, Akira took me right behind the curtain. That's all they let me go, like at the backstage curtain. They wouldn't let me go any further. And Tajiri had all this green around his mouth because he had just missed somebody in the main event. And he smiled, and all his teeth were all green. And he said to me in Japanese, oh, hello, do you speak Japanese? Of course, I went to university here, and I've been here a long time already, so I do speak Japanese. And I said to him, yeah, I speak Japanese. And I'd been at the gym already, working out and kickboxing and stuff, so you can see that I was kind of somewhat built. And he looked at me. He goes, come down to training. If you like it, you're in. And Akira looked at me, and he was like, wow, that never happens. And anyway, I maybe spoke to Tajiri for less than a minute. And then Akira said, he's like, well, that never happens. That surprised me too. Usually they say, come down and do what they call an entrance examination, where they basically try to break you and kill you, which involves, like, say, 500 squats, 500 jumping squats, like an enormous amount of push-ups. Basically what they do is they want to see what point you'll break, and they'll most likely take you anyway. But I didn't have that. For whatever reason, Tajiri, who has a history in Japan of building foreign nobodies into stars, took one look at me and said, like, all right, come down to training. If you like it, you can join. I got an email a week later from Akira saying, I'm sorry to tell you, but Smash is folding. And I thought, oh my God, that's my dream is down the toilet. It's gone. He wrote back and he said, but we're starting a new company called Wrestling New Classic. If you go onto YouTube, you can see, if you type in Dave Finlay Wrestling New Classic, Finlay actually gets on the mic and he says, keep wrestling classic. And there were some lines that Tajiri had given him on the last Smash show to start this new company. And Finlay was a big part of the company at the time, and he ended up carrying over for a year, the first year of WNC. So I get down there in April of 2012, and like the entire roster is there. So Kana, who's now Asuka, so she was there, and the new WNC company was built on Tajiri and Kana. They were the two big stars. They were like what they call the aces. And I watched one training session, and I said, I'm in. I want to be in. I had to quit my job. I was working. I'd done English teaching for a long time, but I actually was working for Bank of America at the time, doing like IT stuff and filming. I'm also a filmmaker, right? So most of my stuff was like filming stuff in the bank. And I said, right, nope, I'm done. I gave it all up, and the rest is history. So from April, the answer to your question is from April 2012.
How tough was training? Obviously, you've explained about your martial arts background. Did you find it easy having that, the martial arts basis to your style? How did you craft it with training? That was going to be my next one.
If I had been doing this in the West, I would have found it extremely difficult. But luckily, the Japanese fans accept a blurred version of a kind of mix between MMA and pro wrestling. We can touch on this later. I'll fill you in on how Japanese pro wrestling started the boom of TV here and the boom of MMA here, which led to the boom of MMA overseas. We'll get onto that later. But if I hadn't been doing it here, I think it would have taken me twice as long to debut. And I wouldn't have been able to really use a whole lot of those skills that I already had, because in the West, we really just want to be pro wrestlers. I know now in 2020, there are a lot of guys who can do both. But this is back even in 2011, it was really only Daniel Bryan in WWE, outside of Japan, who was like kicking the hell out of people. So I got kind of lucky being here.
How was it crafting your move set early on?
Well, to be honest, Japan is still very much whatever they can do to keep kayfabe to the fans, but not only to the fans, but to us wrestlers. I really had no idea what was going on until a few matches after I debuted. They didn't, I'm kind of obviously breaking kayfabe a little, but they didn't smarten me up at all. At all. I had to learn how to basically wrestle properly. I guess a simplified version of catch as catch can wrestling, which is kind of where pro wrestling came from. And then one of my coaches was a guy called Ohara, who's in Pro Wrestling Noah now, and he was like a Mexican luchador kind of guy. He'd spent a long time in Mexico. So I was doing a mix of like legit wrestling holds and a bunch of like luchador stuff, which was totally not, what I was prepared for. But the training was some of the hardest stuff I've ever done in my life. The martial arts didn't really prepare me for what I was going to get into. Eventually, I moved on from WNC because Tajiri decided he wanted to team up with the great Muta and join Wrestle 1. And Wrestle 1 had just broken off from All Japan at the time. And All Japan is the very traditional kill you till you die kind of training. Like they'll drive you into the ground, body slam you until you can't get up, and then they'll body slam you again. And squats by the 500s I've done 1,000 squats once. Couldn't walk for 3 days. It's like hardcore old school wrestling training. But their whole mindset was, if we can get you to overcome this mentally in training, when it gets time to a match and you can't go any further physically in a match, you'll be able to draw from that inspiration of being able to go the extra step in training. You'll be able to do that in a match. And that's kind of where the Japanese still take this more as a legit spectacle than more entertainment.
You've touched upon Wrestle 1, All Japan, WNC. Which other promotions around Japan have you wrestled for, and how do they differ for you personally?
Okay, well, in WNC, I was kind of, what's the word? Really taken care of, because we were a very small group, and the wrestlers were all very young. And all of us young boys, none of us had any storylines. We were just told, go out there and wrestle. And Tajiri told me later on, about a year after I debuted. By the way, I debuted within 10 months, which was kind of a record for Tajiri. He said he usually makes everybody wait at least a year. But he pushed me forward, and I debuted in 10 months, which was February 28th, 2013. But getting back to your question, so WNC, I was really protected. It was Tajiri, Akira, like the vets, a couple of other veterans, but basically all young guys. And we were kind of just told, go out there, wrestle, learn your craft. When I got to Wrestle 1, that was the first time that we're on live TV, Korak and Hall every month, shows 8 to 9 times a month. And that real old school mentality that I kind of really wasn't ready for. And I'll be honest that I struggled a lot in Wrestle 1. more because, I'm not Japanese, and it took me a long time to get used to the Japanese way of thinking of train, and then train some more. But when I left Wrestle One, I was the only foreigner at the time to have a contract. I became a freelancer. And as soon as you become a freelancer, like, that's it. Like, there's no more wrestling training. You have to find your own place to do it. So, like, the legit, like, 5 days a week, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Wrestling training stopped when I left Wrestle One, when my contract expired. So it was like the end of 2015. And from there, I've bounced around. I was in Pro Wrestling Noah for a year. Then I moved on to All Japan for about 4 months. I've basically been in every company except for Big Japan and New Japan. And, New Japan have a thing. You have to be over, I think it's like 6 foot tall, and you have to have this and this, and you have to be a certain age, or you have to have come from some kind of, pedigree from the West. So like ex-WWE or ROH or something like that. So I've kind of don't have that pedigree. So, just sticking to the freelance circuit at the moment here.
It was pre-COVID. I know obviously shows have been running in Japan for quite a while since all this. Were you getting booked extensively as a freelancer?
Yeah, you kind of have to put yourself out there, because when you're a contracted wrestler with a company like I was for WNC and Wrestle One, they own you, right? Once you have that contract, so they have X amount of matches. Like with Wrestle One, it was about 5 a month, and then they'd outsource you, I guess is the word, and you'd have to go and do other matches for other companies, and you wouldn't get paid for it because you're under a contract. Mm-hmm. So that was probably about 5 to 7 a month with them. And when I joined Pro Wrestling Noah, I was a freelancer, but still getting, on every show. So that was a good 6 to 7 matches a month. And it kind of just slowly has gone down now to about, I would say maybe before Corona, I would probably get 2 to 3 a month. And now with Corona, I've had 3 since Corona started.
How many people? Sorry, I jumped in then. How many people have been inside the arenas for the shows? How many are they allowing in at the shows you've done during this time?
Well, I know that New Japan took a good 2 months off completely. Nobody wrestled for them for a good 2 months, I think. Every other company, All Japan, Noah, they all had shows where it was the same as what WWE are doing, like no one in the audience. And since I've been back, they do this, like they call them like the social distance shows, they call them. So they have less than half capacity, and every second seat is open. So no one can see. You can't, even if you're a couple or you come in with friends, you cannot sit next to each other. So for like a typical show where you'd get 500 people, I'd say maybe 150.
I'd tell you what, though, it's better than nothing. As you see with the big companies in America, the way they're running them. I know WWE have done the Thunderdome and all that, but at least you've got some form of crowd there.
Yeah,
I bet that's good for you as a performer.
Well, yeah. I have this thing where I get up on the turnbuckle in my intro and I spit water out. And I was at a tag match about 2 weeks ago, and I did it. And this guy in my tag team goes, "You can't do that." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, shit. I forgot about that." But, yeah, no, it's good to have the fans there. Like I said, like the Japanese are very clean and very big on hygiene. So you get in there and, everyone's got to wash their hands. Everyone's got to put the sanitizer on. You must wear a mask the whole time, that kind of stuff.
How is it for you with the etiquette in Japanese wrestling as to what we have in Western terms of etiquette? Obviously, it differs in Japan. What are the differences for you with Japanese wrestling etiquette? That's what I wanted to ask you.
Well, it's not just in wrestling, but the Japanese in their entire society, whether it be university, high school, any kind of sport, tea ceremony, whatever it is, you name it, they have this senior-junior system, and the entire country is run by it. you get promoted based on seniority only, basically here. You come in, let's say in judo, and you go into the judo club of your university or high school, you're immediately a junior, and your senior is God. But we have the senior-junior system, so you know who your seniors are. The seniority, the ladder, is established very clear. They have this famous saying in Japan, the nail that sticks out gets hammered back in. We know as nails in society not to stick out. We know that. And, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So I know that I have to, conform to these the standards of society here. And it's the same with wrestling. I polite to everybody, treat the juniors a little bit differently, obviously, and they will treat you like a god. It's kind of a little bit strange. I would just like to treat everybody the same. But the senior junior system here it's extremely well established.
That's cool. That's cool, man. How's it been pitting your wits against some of the top guys in Japan? Which guys have you enjoyed getting in there with and tearing it up with through your career in Japan so far?
I had a match in front of basically nobody, a tag match on the road in the middle of freezing cold winter in the countryside against Marufuji. And he blew me away. Like, it was a tag match, and he just blew me away with what he can do. And because it was freezing cold and there was basically no one in the stadium, I'm not sure he probably didn't give it his all 100% that he would, in front of 10,000 fans, at whatever Tokyo Dome, whatever. But I mean, he could go in first gear and still be absolutely incredible. Another one, I teamed up in a 6-man tag against the great Muta. Well, he was actually as Keiji Muto. And the aura of that man it's like standing next to, I couldn't imagine what standing next to The Rock or Stone Cold would be like. But I imagine it to be the same as when I stood next to Muta. Just the aura of that man is incredible. And then as far as brains go, I would say Tajiri, my mentor, is probably one of the smartest guys I've ever met in and out of the ring. He's got like several amazing books as well. And just as far as being smart for the business, just incredibly smart. He's actually the current booker of All Japan, but just incredibly smart. And what an amazing talent he is.
That's incredible, man. That's a good one. Now, obviously, extending off that, who would you like to face? Who's on the bucket list for Mr. Fujiwara? Who you haven't got in there with yet, and you'd love to get him there? Maybe on a world level, not necessarily just Japan, if you'd like.
Oh, well, if you got to talk world level, I kind of honed. What's the word? I kind of based my game off a mixture of CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, who were both obviously very influenced by Japanese wrestlers. I know that Kenta really influenced what Bryan was doing, and they had some incredible matches here in Japan. If you ever get a chance, look on, Bryan Danielson versus Kenta on YouTube. Just some of the most incredible stuff you'll ever see. I kind of based my stuff off them. So, I mean, I would love to obviously wrestle either of them. As far as Japanese go, there's too many. I've been so fortunate to be able to wrestle like several legends. Obviously, Fujiwara, I wrestled before. Tatsumi Fujinami, who's a massive legend here. One of the most famous. He's probably the number 2 to Antonio Inoki as far as being so famous here. This is ours, yeah. It's an endless list.
It's that age-old question that we all ponder. Is wrestling fixed? This is Bill Apter, and my answer to that is I didn't know it was broken. So many of you know me from my days back at the classic wrestling magazines, and a lot of you from OneWrestling.com and OneWrestlingVideo.com. But I always get questions about various things I did through the years to propel my career to where it is today as the world's most recognizable journalist in pro wrestling. What was my relationship with the McMahons? Was I the guy who started that feud between the actor, comedian Andy Kaufman and Jerry the King Lawler? What is Ric Flair really like? Who are my favorites? Well, all this and more answered in my book that you can get online or at your favorite book dealer called Is Wrestling Fixed? I Didn't Know It Was Broken. It's a great read, got great views, and hopefully you'll be picking it up soon too. So the answer to Is Wrestling Fixed? You know it now. I Didn't Know It Was Broken. This is Bill Apter, and I'll see you at the matches.
GTG, often imitated but never duplicated. Kind of broad at the shoulder, narrow at the hip. No other promotion give us any lip. We the best of the best, the beasts of the East. SOS, simply out of sight. GTG.
What he said, good times guaranteed.
This is coming away from wrestling now. I've got another one for you. How does your day-to-day life differ in Japan? I know you've been in Japan for many years. So how life was in Australia, just to come away from wrestling a little bit. You like a personal...
Well, I mean, I've been here since I graduated from university. I did a 1-year exchange program here, and I went back and finished my degree in Japanese in Australia, and I've been here ever since. So, I mean, I only really know student life in Australia. So basically, my entire adult life has been here in Tokyo, and that consists of, well, right now there's a lot of filmmaking stuff going on. And just, hitting the gym and doing martial arts training as much as possible.
How often, obviously prior to all this going on, how often do you get back to Australia, if at all?
Once or twice a year.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I always make sure to wrestle at home. Always make sure to get like the young guys over there. And let them work. Like, I work a very Japanese style because it's all I know. I don't know anything else, right? And I always make sure, to let them know what it's like to wrestle against someone who's worked all of his career in Japan. I've only wrestled, I'm going to count, 3 times in Australia, twice in the US, Dubai. That might be it. So I've probably only wrestled a maximum 6 or 7 matches outside of Japan.
Who have you wrestled for in Australia, and who've you come up against, and who've you enjoyed working with when you've done the stuff in Australia?
My very first major feud was with an Australian guy who came over. And, we have a public holiday in Australia called Anzac Day. And the Anzacs are the Australian, New Zealand Armed Forces. I'm not sure what the C is for, but it's Anzacs. And we have a very famous day where we kind of like a Memorial Day in Australia. And we had me versus him for the Australian title on Anzac Day in Tokyo, which was really cool. And he came over for 3 months, so we were back and forth. We had a nice little feud. AJ his name is. He's still pretty big in Australia. I was very fortunate enough to wrestle, Matt Hardy in the US, which is quite incredible. Matt is what an amazing talent he was. He could wrestle blindfolded and still put on an amazing match, and he basically did. I was a real green when I wrestled him. I'd been in the business about a year, and they say you should be able to wrestle a broomstick and do it well. Well, trust me, Matt can do it.
I've met Matt over in the States at WrestleCon. What a guy.
Yeah.
Spoke to him, obviously, he's there to do a signing, but I was speaking to him for, it must be about 3 minutes, and he had a queue, and all that. What a top guy. I want to meet Jeff, actually, but Matt, just to go back to your point, I know you wrestled him, but as a fan, meeting him, just so much love for the fans, and it really shows, doesn't it? As you say, and should be doing it for the length.
The day that I wrestled him, the first time I saw him was basically, I met him once a day before, and I barely saw him again. It's like all fan interaction.
Who else have you faced in America? Obviously, when you went over.
I went over there for an absolutely amazing company. They since closed down, but they were called 2CW. And on my particular show, there was Kevin Owens at the time, Steen. AJ Styles was on the show. It was an absolutely amazing top card. They had used the Young Bucks quite a lot. And I went over there and I wrestled. My first match was against a guy called Jay Freddy, who I ended up helping get into Wrestle 1. And we had quite a few matches together in Tokyo for Wrestle 1 as well. So I wrestled him on the Friday night, and then I wrestled Matt the next day on the Saturday. That was back in 2014. It's, shout out to the 2CW guys. What an amazing weekend. They flew me out there, and obviously they wanted to do an ECW reunion with Tajiri and Mikey Whipwreck. And I was Tajiri's bad boy. Basically, I carried all his bags. I did all his translations, his interpreting, and they wanted him to do a seminar over there. And so I interpreted, basically everything for him as the interpreter there, and just got to ride his tailcoat. I got to Dubai because of Tajiri. I was the only English speaker in WNC at the time, so he just took to me like a fish in water. And basically became like his little overseas booking manager / whatever you want to call it, bag boy. And it was the greatest time of my life.
Whereabouts was that promotion based in America? Where did you fly out to? Just in relation.
They were in Syracuse, New York, so New York State.
Cool. It's a
amazing. If you get a chance, have a look at 2CW on YouTube. They got some amazing stuff. They used like the who's who of everybody that are probably all now in WWE.
The Northeast up there is a hotbed, isn't it? Always has been for years. I bet it was incredible for you. Right, going into your time in Dubai, I'm going to ask, how was the experience of wrestling out in Dubai? I'm sure it was totally different to what you were used to. So yeah, your experiences in Dubai and how it was for you wrestling there. I've got to ask you.
Yeah, no, it's all right, well, I'll start from the beginning, and it's the craziest story, and it can only happen in the wrestling world. I got an email randomly out of the blue saying we want to book Tajiri. And I went to Tajiri and I said, look, I got an email from Dubai. And he said to me, Dubai, they got oil money. Tell them double the price for his regular booking, expecting them to say like, no, but we can afford this much, And I doubled the price to book him, plus, obviously everything, the airfare and accommodation. Obviously expecting them to say, no, that's too much. And straight away they said, yeah, no problem. First of all, okay, all right, cool. Then they said, we need someone else. I was like, hello there. Well, I'm available. And they said, great, you're in. Just like that. Just like that. Anyway, this was probably 3 months before we were supposed to go over. And Tajiri's one of these guys that loves to get his schedule set months in advance. He wants to know everywhere he's going months and months before. It came down to 2 months before, and he starts really getting under me. What's going on with Dubai? Push him. So I'm pushing him, and they say, yeah, it's on. By this time, we had a little WhatsApp group going. All the wrestlers had found each other. No, sorry, it was a Facebook group. All the wrestlers had found each other on Facebook. And we all had the same situation where we're all supposed to go to Dubai, but no one had been paid for it. No one had flights. It got down to about 4 days before we were supposed to fly out. And no one had anything. No one had tickets. No one had money. And Tajiri had been very big on 50% up front or I don't fly. For me, I didn't care. Right? I'd only been wrestling for like 18 months at the time. And this was a free trip to Dubai. I said, I don't care. I'm going. Finally, about 3 days beforehand, because I'd been pushing these guys, because Tajiri had been pushing me, I finally got a reply saying, all right, we'll pay you half. So half of what Tajiri got was what he usually gets anyway. So he was happy. They paid me half, and I had told them a price that was 4 times more what I was supposed to get, right? And they paid me half, so I was already on double what I was supposed to get. But almost all the European wrestlers hadn't received a dime, nothing. 3 days beforehand. It comes up to about 48 hours beforehand, and we finally get paid. But what had happened was they spelt Tajiri's name wrong on the Western Union transfer. He went down to get the money, and they said, you can't have it. Your name's been spelt wrong. And Tajiri said, screw this. I'm not going. And he was so fed up with just how unprofessional these guys were. And it was the entire group. There was 20 wrestlers. Chris Masters was on the tour, and all the guys from Europe, and Americans as well. And everyone was so upset, just how unprofessional these guys were. But finally, within, say, the last 48 hours, everyone got the tickets out of the blue. We all got our tickets. But Tajiri was like, I'm not going. So he didn't go. Anyway, I went. I got half my pay. Luckily, the European guys, I'm almost positive sure that they didn't get their pay. I get to the airport. There's no one there waiting for me. And I get onto the Wi-Fi there. And the guys in the wrestling group, the Europeans and the Americans, had all come earlier. And they had checked me into a 3-star hotel. Now, this is 3-star in Dubai, right? And there were rats in the hotel. The pillows had holes in them. It was just pretty much the slums of Dubai where they had checked these wrestlers in. And by the time that the wrestlers arrived, and by the time the other ones, and by the time that I arrived, I was probably one of the last ones, they had a protest to the promoters and said, we're not performing on your show tomorrow if you don't put us in a better hotel. So they put us in a 5-star hotel. And the show was only for 2 nights. What they didn't tell us is they only booked it for 1 night. We'll get back to that in a second. So I arrive. The hotel's all been taken care of. Thankfully, the veterans had stood up, and they'd done us junior guys a solid, and they'd included us in it. And they said nobody wrestles unless you put all our guys in this hotel. So we all stayed in. Obviously, someone like Chris Masters had got the royal treatment. He had been really taken care of, ex-WWE. Anyway, so that was a Friday night. Saturday morning, I actually had been introduced through a friend to an ex-WWE guy who was doing real estate in Dubai. Ex-NXT guy. Well, at the time, Florida, FCW. He actually took me around Dubai all day and showed me around. It was awesome. Get to the show at nighttime. No one can find the promoters. They don't even come introduce themselves. The matches were all over the place. No one knew who was wrestling who because some people had pulled out and whatever. So about an hour before the show, the entire card gets swapped around and changed. Right? We don't know what's going on. About 45 minutes before the show, we hold a wrestlers-only meeting. No one's been paid, by the way. I had got my half. Some guys hadn't got any. And we had a meeting. And basically the thing was, well, we're here now. The fans are here. Let's go put on the show, and then we'll go see the promoters after the show. And it was a 1-night only show, and we'll go make sure they pay us. We had been promised by the promoters that it was in an Olympic swimming center where they'd put all wooden floors over the pools, and they'd put a boxing ring down, right, with silk curtains for a canvas. So we were slipping and sliding all over the place on a ring that had no give. Incredibly hard. We were promised that there'd be minimum 2,500 people coming to the show. It was going to be massive. We get there and we go out. I was second on the card. I would say there would have been about 70 people there. I would say 40 of them were kids. Whatever. It's still fun. We got there. I do the match. By halftime, the promoters have completely disappeared. There's nowhere to be seen. Gone. End of the show comes. All these angry wrestlers backstage, and they're like, we got to go find these promoters. But the promoters had taken off. They're gone. We had a driver, and the driver said, look, calm down, because the wrestlers were really angry. Calm down. I'll take you back to the hotel, and I'll tell the promoters to come down and pay you. We knew better that they weren't coming, but they weren't at the venue. There's nothing. We had to go back to the hotel. So anyway, the hotel was really nice, by the way, 5-star in Dubai. Anyway, so we're hanging out with some of the wrestlers there. I'd say it got to about midnight, maybe 1 o'clock in the morning in our room. We get a call from the front desk saying, what are you guys doing in the room? Like, this room hasn't been paid for. Like, you guys have to leave now or pay whatever it was. I think it was like $600-700 a night, right, to stay in the room. They only booked us for that Friday night. They hadn't booked us for the Saturday night. So I said, well, hey, my flight's tomorrow. I'm going out partying. So I grabbed my suitcase and I called up my buddy who the ex-FCW guy, and I said, let's go out drinking. This is Saturday night, and Saturday night in Dubai is like Sunday night, right? So the party nights are Thursday, Friday in Dubai. It was a whole lot going on party scene-wise, but, I went out to the bars and in Dubai and just waited till my flight the next day. I don't know what the other guys did, but just an incredible experience. You meet these kind of people in the wrestling world sometimes.
See, as a fan, we think it's all glitz, all glamour, but you had all that going on, and oh my god, it just sounded very unorganized.
Well, as far as glitz and glamour go, there is zero glitz and glamour outside the 10 to 15 minutes you're in the ring, especially in Japan. In Japan, it's you take an 8-hour bus from city to city. It's silence on the entire bus ride. You're not allowed to talk. Now, no one tells you on the bus you cannot talk. You just know you're not allowed to talk, right? Because Japanese, they're either all sleeping or they're reading their manga or their video games or reading whatever. You just don't talk. So you're in complete silence. And you get there and you check into what they call business hotels here, which are basically little tiny rooms, right? So tiny, more like the size of maybe, I don't know, your bedroom at the most, right? Very small little rooms. And that's how it is town to town. You leave, you get on the road, you're on the bus for 8 hours in complete silence, get to the arena. And when you wrestle for the big companies, for me, I was always very nervous because, as a freelancer, you're trying to keep your job. So, you got to go out there and perform. You got to do a good job. If you mess up, that's it. So it's a whole bunch. It's, for me, it was like get off the bus, go stretch, go prepare, but very jittery, Mm-hmm. And then when you get in the ring, finally, you're okay. But leading up to that point of getting in the ring, you're very nervous. And as a guest in the company, you're very careful of which feet not to step on. You finish the match, you go do your merch sales, and it's straight back on the bus to the next town in silence. This kind of, yeah. But I wouldn't give any of it up for a second.
And that's the main thing, isn't it? But yeah, as I say, as fans think it's all glitz and glam, but that's good way of putting it, and obviously the experience there on the bus in Japan. That's good.
I'd do it all over again. It was, despite the feelings of, uneasy, what's the word? Like, not being at ease and being nervous. And then, once you get in the ring, you're fine. I'm totally fine.
Yeah.
But, like, the whole thing about, when you get places like Noah and all Japan, there's so many legends, so many amazing athletes, and you're trying so hard to, to impress them or to learn from them. It's really an incredible experience.
I'm going to just move on to prospective guys that want to get into the business. What would be your tips as it pertains to training and then obviously making it as a wrestler? What would be your tips for young guys wanting to come into the business from your perspective?
We can look at it like as far as how to get to Japan, do you mean? Or just in general?
Yeah, I think, general, but then... Yeah, if you'd like to extend off that, Japan is what you do in terms of Japan as well. So yeah, two parts to it, if that's all right.
Yeah, all right. We'll start with in general. I have only recently in the last 2 or 3 years been very heavily influenced by, obviously there's the Fujiwara thing, who was influenced, he was very much influenced by a guy called Karl Gotch.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Gotch over here in Japan they call him the god of wrestling. And his big thing was always cardio is your best hold. Your best finishing maneuver is cardio. So I would say, first of all, if you want to get into the business here, you have to absolutely find, a good trainer, someone with a proven pedigree who can get you places, who has connections, but is also a very good trainer. It's super important that you get trained properly. That's super important. That's the biggest thing. Get trained properly. The next biggest thing is you don't waste your time playing video games or stuck in your phone or whatnot. You must hit the gym. You gotta look the part. It's so important. People will take the piss if you're a bag of bones and you're trying to body slam people. It's a little bit different if you're a high flyer and you're very athletic and you know, what's the word? But, you know, at the end of the day, even though we're here to entertain, we're still trying to present this as this is legit, this is a real product, or this is, I'm trying to kill this guy. I want to beat this guy. And we really want, you know, you look back at some of your heroes in pro wrestling and they're guys, you know, you look back, let's say, my generation was always like DX, the early version of DX, right? You look at Shawn Michaels, you look at Triple H, these guys look like Greek gods, right? Even before that, like the generation before me, like the Hogans and the Savages, these guys were people that we wanted to be like. Like you look at someone like a Randy Orton, and they used to always say, like JBL used to say, if you wanted to build a wrestler from the ground up, you would build a Randy Orton. And he's 100% right. That guy is like a Greek god. But it comes from, you know, like 100% working hard in the gym, getting your gym time in, getting what I call getting the road work in, which is going out and running. I think if you really, really want to dedicate yourself to being a wrestler, you cannot skimp, you cannot be lazy when it comes to getting in the gym and trying to look the best that you can be. Because at the end of the day, we're all in the business for ourselves, to get ourselves further. And you can only do that being the best version of yourself that you can be. That's the biggest thing I can say is get in the gym, look the part, and get trained properly.
How about in terms of Japan then? If it was a young guy,
Japan,
yeah, how does it differ? So, you know, the general, obviously it's different rules apply, don't they?
It's almost a closed door for foreigners to get here. If you're a foreigner trying to get into New Japan, it's entirely through a connection. You wrestled, you're an ex-WWE guy. You're an I think they had a contract with ROH, I'm not sure if they still do. You're an ROH guy, and you can cross over, right? Or you're an ex whatever. They generally never ever take an unknown at the moment. As far as in the 80s and 90s, it was even harder. You had to be an established star in somewhere to get over to Japan. As far as right now, it's 100% no matter where you are anywhere in any company in Japan, it's who you know. That's absolutely who you know. The only way to get some kind of career here in Japan is to fly yourself over. Tajiri flew himself over to Mexico, by the way, when he was a young boy, which is how he got scouted to go to ECW. He entirely funded himself to go over there to Mexico, and was introduced to Paul Heyman to get him in, you know, through his Mexican connections. But you would have to fly yourself over to Japan, get a job as an English teacher or in a bar or whatever. If you're an American, it's hard because you need to have a degree, because Americans need to have degrees. Luckily for an Australian or a Brit or a Canadian, they have working holiday visas, which are easy to get. But you have to be here first and then try and knock on someone's door and see if they let you in. It's really hard, really super hard here to get in at the moment. Or be a promoter. Be a promoter somewhere, fly someone in, who's got some power in Japan, and then you scratch their back, they'll scratch yours kind of thing. That's usually probably how it will work if you're an established, but not in a bigger company. If you're someone like, say, in Eastern Europe or someone in Australia, that's probably how you'd get in. But at the end of the day, it's all about who you know.
That's good answer. Good. That's good. Good thing for these young guys to take away. Definitely. I really wanted to ask you that. Just obviously everyone's perception's different and the answer's different, so it's cool to ask you guys. Now,
I'll say one more thing.
Yeah.
Is if you have the heart and the desire and the will to never give up, you can be a pro wrestler no matter how big or small you are. And Japanese will especially take you if you just have that. Even if that's all you have at the beginning, they will take to you and they will train you to be a wrestler. I mean, I'm not going to say anybody can do it, but you don't have to be the most technically gifted. When you get here, you just have to have a massive heart, and you probably most likely will be able to find your footing somewhere and get your foot in the door somewhere here.
That's cool, man. What are some of your favourite matches of all time? I can imagine there's quite a lot of matches, but yeah, just maybe you can just encapsulate a few matches as a fan, not necessarily as a wrestler. Yeah, maybe when you were growing up, some of the matches that you enjoyed watching. I want to ask you that.
Well, how about I do first, because I want to touch on how I became Fujiwara.
Yeah.
So I'll do my favorite, let's say my favorite 2 matches as a worker, and then some of my favorite ones not as a fan, obviously, because at the end of the day, we're all fans. That's why we want to be wrestlers. But I had been wrestling for 8 months as a guy called Yankee Rionne. I didn't choose that name. I'm not American. But here in Japan, a Yankee is not an American. A Yankee is a loudmouth, kind of know-all. And Tajiri had really wanted me to be this shoot-fighting, loudmouth white guy. And, I had grown up watching WWE and not a whole lot of Japanese wrestling, so I didn't really have much of an idea what a shoot-fighting wrestler was. That was the biggest problem. And I don't know, maybe it's because I'm not the greatest actor, perhaps, but I didn't really pick up on the whole, loudmouth thing because I was too caught up in trying to learn how to wrestle. More that I was the only one in the company. He really wanted to have a character as straight away. But he put me as Yankee Rionne. And 8 months in, I'm going to say no. So February I debuted. In July, he came to me. And he said to me, we have this massive big show at Korakuen Hall, which is like the mecca of wrestling here in Tokyo, right, in Japan. And WNC only ran that two times a year, whereas all the other big companies ran it every month. And we really need to sell out because it costs $10,000 US per night to rent it out, which is quite a big down payment for a small company like us. So he said to me, I will give you a match with the biggest legend I can find on the condition that you get 100 signatures to say they will come, right? And that means 100 tickets, right? Because it ended up being obviously Fujiwara. Fujiwara costs a hell of a lot, he said to me. And if I'm going to give you this platform, and it's way too early for you to be doing it, you've only been wrestling 8 months, but I'm going to do it. At the time, it was only 5 months when he came to me. I was green as they come. He said, I really got to make sure we get butts in seats, right? Fujiwara will take care of you, but he costs a lot. So we're going to do this shoot storyline where if you don't get 100 names on a piece of paper, you don't get the match. So we go down to Fujiwara's office and with the cameras, and everyone thought it was some kind of like kayfabe story. It was like some kind of made up, but it was 100% legit. If I didn't get 100 butts in seats, I wasn't going to get the match. And Fujiwara knew it. We went down, we did this whole thing on the cameras, and I ended up getting 278 signatures. Such was the popularity of the whole match. I had some people buying tickets, signing the form, and saying, I can't go that night, but I'm supporting you. Because the fans kind of, they see us come up from, they see us like, they see your hand, because in Japan they have these things called seconds, where you sit on the apron. I don't know if you ever watched any Japanese wrestling, you see these kids. And they're like this, and they watch, right? Yeah. So I was a second the whole time before I debuted. And the whole idea about seconds is, they call it a second, is to get out there, let the fans see you, and so the fans are invested in you as a person. They see you from day one, sitting down there as a green rookie before you know anything, looking and watching, to the minute that you debut to whatever. So these fans had seen me as a second, as a young boy coming through, and they were really invested in me to have this match with Fujiwara. We were on the road one day after everything had been decided, and, Tajiri said to me, you know what? I don't really like this Yankee Rionne name anymore. And Tajiri is a guy who is he'll change his mind like that. Whatever it is, the whole reason we went to Wrestle 1 is because overnight he decided he didn't want to run WNC anymore. He wanted to be a contracted wrestler again and not be a promoter/owner. That's why we moved within weeks. He decided that he wanted to change my name again, and I was one of the few to get this like special treatment of he was really trying to shape me as a character. He said to me, go to Fujiwara and say to him, if I impress you after the match, please allow me to be your student. He said to me, like, I want you to be this shoot fighter wrestler. It's not really working out because you don't really know what, and I didn't know what a shoot fighter was. I'd only been watching WWF the whole time, WWE. He goes, I still want you to train with us, but you need to go and train with someone who's a shoot fighter. So if Fujiwara accepts you, you'll need to go train with him as well as train with us. So I had the match with him. At the end of the day, Fujiwara, at the end of the match, he says to me, out of the blue, I have no idea this was coming, except that I'd already asked him, is it okay, may you allow me to train with you, sir? But he said it out of the blitz on YouTube as well. He said to me, we had mic in hand, from tomorrow, you are now known as Fujiwara Rionne. I was like, wow, what the hell? And it's the first time in the history of Japanese pro wrestling, and probably ever will be, that, I've been christened in the ring by a Japanese legend and given a name. So that, obviously, for that reason, was my all-time favorite match. And then the other matches, of course, have been with with Marufuji and Tajiri and Muta, just for being in the ring. But probably as the one that I clearly remember the most, apart from Fujiwara, is the Matt Hardy match, just for how great that guy is and like how professional, like he is. Like just, I mean, that is a professional wrestler right there.
It's quite the resume of guys you've been in there with. I bet it's just incredible for you as a performer.
I don't know why. I'm not. I'll be the first to say I'm not exactly a religious guy. There may be some kind of God-like something out there that whatever. And I'm don't want to get onto that topic, but someone is looking out for me, because I don't know how I got so lucky. Like Tajiri used to always say to me, like, lucky boy. And, he always speak in Japanese to me, but he'd always say, Rionne-san, lucky boy. And my old man used to always say to me, my dad, he used to say to me, and he still does, you put your hand down the toilet and you'll pull out a gold watch. And, and that's kind of true, because I just been very fortunate, not always deserving, I suppose, but it's a testament to, if you work hard and shut up and do what you're told and learn from the best, that, you can get opportunities. And, due to that Fujiwara training and my previous martial arts background, Wrestle One and WNC, anytime we can get onto this, and I do want to touch on this a little bit about MMA and pro wrestling and how they're connected, but they would always put me with the MMA guy who wants to try pro wrestling, and there's a lot of them, you know, and without even kind of really knowing it, I did somehow become, without meaning to be, a shoot fighting wrestler, without even knowing, you know, how I did it or wanting to even be one, you know.
That's cool.
Now, as far as favorite matches,
yeah,
my favorite of all time is the first Taker versus Michaels WrestleMania match. But what got me onto wrestling was Bret Hart versus versus Stone Cold.
Mm-hmm.
When Stone Cold bled.
Yeah.
And watching Bret Hart as a boy, I may have only been 10 or 11, but watching him go to work on Austin's leg and just being like, as a boy, you're like, oh my God, like he is just ripping the shit out of Austin's leg. How is Austin able to stand? How can he do this? Right? And then when he locks it in the sharpshooter, knowing that he's taken all this damage on this leg as a little boy, you're like, he has to give up. He has to give up. And he doesn't. And that was like, oh my God, this is the greatest shit ever created by man. That was like the match that hooked me, right? Was definitely that. I think, what was that? WrestleMania
13, 1997. I watched it live, yeah, at the time.
Yeah, what was I? 97? Fuck. Jeez. No, not even 10.
Yeah, you're born the same year as me, 86.
Yeah, right.
We had that feud had more legs as well. It was such a shame. I know Brett went on to WCW. They had more. They had a longer story to tell. I know they had great matches like back end of 96 through to 97. Just imagine Brett hadn't left, or Stone Cold had gone to WCW. Who knows? Yeah. But they don't run feuds like that, especially in America now. It's all done. It's all done in a nanosecond, isn't it? I know. Yeah. I know the business has changed, but yeah. What other matches? What other matches can you stick in your mind growing up?
Well, I almost cried my eyes out when HBK said. I mean, I'm always getting a bit emotional now when he said, "I'm sorry," and then super kicked Ric Flair. It was like, this is what wrestling is about. This is not about the super kick, right? It's about the story.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Ric Flair spent 6 months not getting fired, not getting retired.
Yeah.
And coming out of nowhere. And then, I mean, we knew it was coming. We all knew it was coming. We knew that HBK had lost before, the couple of years before, to Taker. He was not going to lose that one. It was Ric Flair's time to go. We knew that, but we still didn't want it to happen because we were emotionally invested in the story. That's what wrestling's about.
I was there. I was in Orlando for it. Yeah.
Oh, lucky man.
Incredible. What a night. And also obviously Undertaker and Edge the same night. And then just going back to Michaels and Taker, I wasn't in Houston for 25. I had to watch it from home. But I was there for the career threatening, the Street versus the career. I was in Phoenix. I was in Phoenix for the second one. Total different match. Match, wasn't it? That's just how good those guys were, man.
My one of my best friends from Australia, massive wrestling fan, he was there for both. For the second match, and then he went to Raw the night after.
Yeah.
And he had the signs with my name on them, which was really cool. You know, obviously my real name, my shoot name is McAvoy. And everyone calls me Macca. So he has a sign there like, "Hey, Macca," in WrestleMania. That's my little WrestleMania moment,
I was in attendance for that. I need to go back out. I need to watch that Raw again. I'll have a look on the network. Look out for the sign, man. Definitely.
Yeah. 100%. It's a yellow, fluoro green yellow sign that says, "Hey, Macca."
There's a lot of Aussies over there, as there was a lot of UK. It's great. It's great to when we all go over and do that. I need to do another one, but yeah, it's not about me anyway. I've kind of gone into me.
No, go ahead. We're here to talk wrestling.
In football, I want to get onto football. I've got to get onto football. We spoke about this off camera, and you said you're not going to like who I support, right? You're a Liverpool fan. Just how are you about winning the title? I'm sure you were elated.
Well, the first thing. Go on. Sorry.
Finally Liverpool winning the title. I know, like you guys, you've been waiting 30 years for that. And
well, the first thing is I don't hate Everton at all. It's good for the city if both teams are thriving. So, I mean, I see your nice Everton shirt there. I wish I wore my Liverpool shirt.
You got your rock one on, mate.
Your rock shirt on.
Yeah, man.
But my father, as I told you, very small town up north, Workington, managed by Bill Shankly in the 50s. He was based in, he was based in the Merchant Navy in Liverpool, so that's why he's a Liverpool fan. And when you're from such a little town, even to this day, most of the people in Workington are Man United supporters now. But at the time, you supported one of the biggest teams, right? So a lot of people are Liverpool fans. But he had, people that have become basically our family, extended family, are all from Liverpool. And those families are all split 50-50, right? They're, I don't know, you would know better than me, but of all the families we know, there's at least one or two or split of the family who's a blue and a red.
Absolutely.
Or friends, best friends are split. So I know that the rivalry is massive and the Merseyside derbies are just amazing, but I want Everton to be good because that means we got to be that much better. We have to be because we don't want to lose to you guys. We don't want to be, we don't want Everton to be above us. You don't want Liverpool to be above you. Usually happens, But as far as winning the title, I mean, the last time we did it, was it 1990?
Yeah, it was.
I don't know. I wasn't even watching.
I was too young. I was too young, mate. Same age, aren't we? But it was just
30 years of heartbreak. 30 years of mismanagement, of almost getting there, but and the Gerard Houllier, who then we had Rafa, who played incredibly negative football, but almost got us there.
Yeah.
Then we went from Roy Hodgson and the American owners who almost bankrupted us. We're hours away from being from folding. The Royal Bank of Scotland stepped in and sold us to the Boston Red Sox owners for an incredibly cheap amount. Fenway Sports Group, who have been incredible for us.
Yeah.
But Jurgen Klopp, what a man! What a man! I mean, he's the next coming of Shankly. The way he's galvanized the team, he spoke out when the supporters left the stadium early. This Liverpool fans will not dare leave that stadium until the final whistle because of Klopp. And I mean, that's what football needs. And I think finally you guys have got someone who can somewhat, he's not as charismatic as Klopp, who is really.
Yeah.
But as far as being a football genius, Ancelotti is certainly, right up there.
Don Carlo Magnifico. That's what it's all about. Proper manager. I did take away going just segueing into Everton. I did take what he was saying when we came back after lockdown for the 8-9 games, and everyone was saying, why have you not signed anyone? Well, he said, I'm going to wait till next year, but he's still, there's a lot of dead weight. There's a lot of dead weight there. They're looking at Wilfred Zaha and Iwobi going the other way, I think. We're trying to hash out a deal. I know he's trying to get that one over, but we've got to keep those three guys fit. Allen, Rodriguez and Decore, they're the hotbed of the middle now. But it'll be interesting. And we've not beaten you guys in 10 years. The last win was at Goodison in 2010. I remember it well.
There you go.
So it'll be interesting when we have the derbies this year, mate, to see what happens.
You've not had a whole lot of luck at Anfield.
No.
But you usually can get a draw at Goodison.
1999, we last beat you at Anfield. Kevin Campbell scored.
Kevin Campbell. Steven Gerrard got sent off.
Yeah. I remember it well, mate. I remember it well.
Yeah.
Right, Ryan.
Yes.
Can you plug your social media? Also, can you plug? You talked about the filmmaking, so if you could plug like where your films are and stuff like that, that'd be cool. Just to come away from the wrestling a little bit, you know.
Yep. I recently watched a documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma, and it made me jump off Facebook completely. Just want to give it a break. I still have Messenger on there. That's how we communicate. I still keep Messenger. And not just because of the documentary, but just like, you know, I'm involved in a lot of martial arts groups and catch wrestling groups, other general stuff. And just the amount of absolute shite that goes on in these groups is just, it was just too much. Like people constantly, you know, bashing each other and commenting, and it's just like I'm checking out of this whole Facebook experience. So I stay on Twitter only because I have to. It's kind of big here in Japan for wrestlers. So I am Rionne. I am Rionne. And I chose that. An interesting story. I'll tell you why I chose that handle. I was WWE. They still until the Corona. They come over to Japan every summer. And before I debuted back in 2010, I went to the show. I went out drinking afterwards, and I randomly stumbled into Chris Jericho coming out of a convenience store in Tokyo. And I said, Chris, was a young kid, 24 or something, right? Well, I was 24. Chris, I just went to the show. It was amazing. He was wasted, drunk. He had a pint glass in his hand that he had walked out of a pub with, right? And he was drinking on the street. In Japan, you're allowed to drink on the street, by the way. And he said, hey, kid. He's like, hey, how was the show? And he was wasted. And he was with the referee from Undertaker Shawn Michaels 1, who would always remind you about that. I was the referee in that. Good guy. And he goes, come with me, kid. And we went back to the hotel, which was only a couple of minutes away. And I sat in the lobby and drank with Chris Jericho from 3 o'clock in the morning to about 7 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
Randomly. Completely randomly.
Yeah. The best way.
Randomly. And the reason that you chose that handle because he was on his phone tweeting, and I had no idea what Twitter was. And I went on there, and I was kind of trying to look over, and I saw him, like, you know, and back in the day in 2010 for Twitter, you know, like celebrities would actually seriously reply to their fans. Now, I don't know, it might be teams or maybe they retweet more.
Yeah.
But I went on there, and the first person I followed was Jericho. And I am Jericho, right? And I was like, I didn't know any better. So I am Rionne. And he was the first guy I followed. I just kept it ever since. It was a crazy story, that one. And that's the only social media I have.
At least you can just keep it, you know, nice and concise. And yeah, I like the way you've done that, man. My guest for Stu's Wrestling Podcast today, Rionne Fujiwara, all the way from Tokyo, Japan. Absolute honour to have you on, man. I've loved it. I really enjoyed hearing your story, man, and the career,
thank you.
and making your life in Japan. And it's really inspiring. It'll be inspiring for young lads here on the North Wales coast. We've got a lot of wrestling schools, and they're doing very well.
I really do want to get over to the UK to work. I really want to wrestle there. In 2015, I had the chance to do some private training with Marty Jones because I was going over to the UK for a holiday to see my family, and I was approached by a magazine, wrestling magazine in here. They see my Twitter. I had said that I'm going to the UK, and they said, we really want to do a story on Marty. Can we pay you to interpret for him and take photos for us while you're there? Because they loved Marty. And so we went down to his gym, and he stretched me hard. He put on a few good holds that made me tap legit. and I interviewed him for him, and I took photos. So that's my only experience I have in the UK. But I really want to get down to over to the UK, and I have a lot of family there, and I really want to work over there. But it's a great wrestling scene that you have.
Funnily enough, Marty Jones was at a local dojo, literally 10 miles away a couple of weeks ago, doing a seminar, and a lot of the guys go up to his school up in the near Manchester, Greater Manchester way as well. The lads travel from here to go. So it's just brilliant. It's full. I'm sure it's full circle for him training these young kids, man. So yeah, it's as you say,
it's got so much stuff.
What a hotbed it is. I know there's a lot worldwide, a lot of areas where it's big, but especially here, the amount of independence now is crazy. To see where it was 10 years ago to where it is now, that's cool, man. Rionne Fujiwara, thank you so much for coming on, man. I've loved it. I've loved every second of it.